Hey guys, how's it going? Kripparrian here. Today I want to bring you guys a Path of Exile 2 guide to the Infernalist character that I've been playing. It's been a pretty good character. There you go, in-game. Boom. We're doing well. We are up to nearly 3,000 life. I think it's a pretty good build, because yeah, you can see the ladder there. We're third on the ladder in solo self-found. Now I'm about to go to sleep, so who knows? That might hold, that might not. But I have not been playing efficiently. I did not have access to the game at all since like ExileCon, and that was very much a demo that didn't even include the class that I'm playing. Basically, the evening before the game came out, I went through the data leak stuff, and I made a build. And the build was based on being a tanky Necromancer style playthrough for the Infernalist. And it turns out everyone kind of swapped their builds to my skill setup at least. So the skill setup is really good. There's different ways to kind of stack defenses. I'm pretty happy with my character, so I want to show you guys how that works. If you guys do want more info, make sure to check out the guide on Mobalytics. We are on Mobalytics for Path of Exile 2 as well. The build is pretty crude in showing, you know, the basics. It's really just the very basics. You're not really expected to find ideal gear in Path of Exile 2. You just kind of go with it and run with it. And obviously you're not expected to get 6 links. I tried to order the gems roughly in the order that you get them and how important they are. And this is an end-to-end game tree. So I just kind of wanted to go over some of the details in this video because experience does help quite a bit. So if you've seen some of the skill trees, these nodes don't give anything to minions. That's because if you play only a witch, they take over the nodes with minion damage. So that's why we're getting those. Those are witch exclusive. If you play like a gemling or something and you go all the way here, these nodes will be the sorcerer nodes. They will not be minion damage. So if you're playing this as a different class, you'll probably have to do the build a little bit differently. The idea is that we get some minion nodes. For survivability for minions, the Vial Mending is definitely the most important one because regenerate 3% life per second is a lot. Having a bit of Chaos Resist is pretty nice as well. 40 life there is pretty efficient. This isn't too bad. This isn't too bad. You certainly have options. You can get accuracy on the tree if you want. The alternative is to socket Bullseye in Raging Spirits. The Reservation one is pretty good. The other ones, I think, pretty mediocre. I like these nodes. I like these nodes because 20 all resist here is more efficient than getting it someplace here. Is it this one? Yeah. It's just kind of a long distance. I initially planned to go dual curse, but curses in Path of Exile 2, when you cast the curse, do that, it goes off 1 second later. So if you get dual curse on the tree, it doubles that delay. It's pretty bad, man. I don't know. I kind of went backwards on that. But some experience helps quite a bit. But yeah, I started off just going kind of glass cannon. I went with that minion cluster, that minion cluster, this minion cluster, and this minion cluster is about the same weight. A few more minion nodes there. And then the way that I played the build is different than I've seen others play the build. I went for armor, a bit of regen, strength stacking. I got heat proofing. And this thing is crazy good. 25% of armor also applies to fire damage taken from hits. And I can get unbending, so I have a little bit more life. There's very few life nodes on the tree, and a bit more stun threshold. This character has insane stun threshold, and I'll tell you why that matters in a second. For the ascendancy, you want to get the loyal Hellhound first. It's a super power. It's basically the only reason we're playing this. And yeah, it's good enough. I think Infernalist is the best way to play this character. Altered Flesh is insane. You can get it right away. The physical damage taken as Chaos. If it was PoE 1, you'd be like, ooh, I don't know. Probably have negative Chaos Resist. Actually, Chaos Resist does not get reduced when you go through the acts and when you go to the mapping system. When you do a new tier of map, your resists get reduced even further. So I've done, I don't know if it counts, but I've done a tier 15 plus 1 It's like a corrupted zone. So I'm doing like a T16 map. So I don't know if they keep getting reduced further than this. I sure as hell hope not. But yeah, they might. I have a lot of int, I have a lot of strength. In PoE 2, 1 strength is equal to 2 life. This is 4 times the value than PoE 1, which is why we get so much strength. We even get the beef. Famously, the beef. So, a lot of people ask, do you get strength or do you get int? Well, when I started off, I'm like, well, I don't need int, so I'll get strength. Well, I'm kind of getting close to where my gems require int again, so I'll get int. Then I'll get strength. Needed some int, needed some int. It's pretty easy to respec. You go to the refund passives. You can like literally click on it. You don't have to like, you know, delete a whole bunch of passives and then figure it out that way. So it's pretty easy. It's pretty chill. So how do the skills work? So your Infernal Hellhound is here. It automatically gets links as you level. They said it gets 6th link in like the 80s. I'm level 83. I don't have a 6th link. But why is the Hellhound so good? It costs nothing. And basically it has a little fire aura around it. This is really, really powerful. I don't think it does that much damage, even though he has 11,000 life. It just really doesn't deal that much damage. We just want to keep him alive because he takes 20% of damage for us. So we have Meat Shield just to give him way more life. Last Gasp. Like if we get just annihilated, if you get like obliterated by a really rippy pack of mobs, then we want him to still be alive to just keep tanking a little bit and also taking damage from me. But the real piece that makes this really work is the Fire Exposure. So Fire Exposure is support skills. Support skills inflict fire exposure on igniting an enemy. His fire aura is an ignite. Okay, so he will, just by being in close proximity to enemies, he will basically give fire exposure to them, and you can give fire exposure applied by supporter skills plus 30% effect. So he does minus 26 fire resist, basically where the action is happening. Reduces damage you take by 20%, and that is just absolutely crazy, and probably just solo makes Infernalist the best minion build, because the best summons seem to be fire-based. Okay, if you're playing a non-Infernalist, you can try some of the other stuff, but fire seems to be where it's at. In PoE 2, you can't use a support twice. So why is fire the best? It's the best because of Raging Spirits. Now, Raging Spirits by themselves, they're not like overpowered or anything, but Raging Spirits do primarily fire damage, and they're melee. And then you have the Skeleton Arsonist, which does primarily fire damage, and is a ranged spellcaster. So what it means is, you can do fire damage with both of them, you can use both of them, but they use different supports. Like Fire Infusion is an attack skill, so you can only use that on the Raging Spirits. Now, because Raging Spirits attacks, you need to get some accuracy. So I put Bullseye on it. I'm pretty sure this works, but the tooltip for the Raging Spirits is bugged. You need to have them like in summon to see some of their stats, but even those I think are bugged. So I don't know, that's kind of, there's a lot of bugs in PoE 2. The game's running pretty well, but there's a lot of bugs still. So that's the idea. Now, Raging Spirits is a ridiculously spirit-efficient skill. If you are getting minions, the permanent ones anyway, they typically cost spirit. Raging Spirits is kind of like a hybrid between that. It's a buff. People are going to be like, hey, why am I not getting Raging Spirits when I get a skill? It's not a skill. You need to get a buff gem, and then you can shape that into a Raging Spirits and use it. You activate it by right-clicking it. Active, not active. Now it's active. And you either can use projectile fire spells, which I don't recommend, or you can use area fire spells. And there's only one that's ridiculously good, which is Flame Wall. So we have Flame Wall with Fortress. Normally it's like an actual wall. Fortress makes it into a circle. So Flame Wall, like in PoE 1, projectiles which pass through it deal added fire damage. Now this is modified by the user. So the projectiles of the Arsonists, when they go through the firewall, they get this added bonus. and then the multipliers of minions and arsonist related things gets multiplied, and then they do way more damage. So the reason why I like to have Flame Wall with Fortress is so, like, let's say this Salvage Bench is a dangerous monster I want to kill. I can cast that Firewall while targeting it. It'll summon the Raging Spirits because it's a really big area spell when it comes to summoning Raging Spirits. Cast it twice for the maximum of 10. The Raging Spirits will attack in melee. And because I cast it on the target, wherever my arsonists are attacking from, they are going to get the bonus. If I had just a wall, I would basically have to think about the positioning of it. And thinking is something you want to kind of leave behind because there's a lot of other stuff to think about when you're actually playing PoE 2. I also have Arcane Tempo to cast it a little bit faster, and I have Mobility because in PoE 2 you can cast stuff while you're moving, and with Mobility you can cast stuff with less of a movement penalty. So I'm hardly not moving whenever I'm playing the game. Just do that. The Curse is a pretty fast cast time. Curse, Fire, that's pretty much the gameplay loop. I also have Raise Shield. So in PoE 2, shields have block like they do in PoE 1, but when it comes from a monster, it doesn't matter if it's an attack or a spell. You can block it, you can evade it with your evasion. It has no distinction between the two. It's a monster-sourced like hit, basically. So I have 26 block and spell block, but honestly, stacking block in PoE 2 is a waste of time because every shield has Grant Skill Raise Shield, which is this one. So this is blocking, and you block 100% spells and attacks. Now you can't block ground effects, some special slams, and a few boss abilities, but when it comes to mapping, this is insane. You can even move while you have it. It is just crazy. Why would you be a pleb and invest in block when you can be a Chad and invest absolutely nothing and have 100% chance to block? Not 75, which is the cap for regular block, 100%. Now, you might be thinking, wait, this sounds too good to be true. It is. It's only for the Giga HP stacking Chads because basically as you block in this mode, it chips away at your like endurance threshold. But because we're life stacking, we have a extremely high endurance threshold. Even in the highest tier maps in the game, you can just sit there and block for a really long time. And even if your thing fills up, it's a very small stun in between, and you have very high damage reduction. Now, this build doesn't use like the energy shield conversion stuff or the mind over matter. There might be some ways where this character can be built better defensively in like the super end game, especially if you're utilizing trading. But for coming up with the character and just, you know, starting fresh, this is solo self-found, so I haven't traded at all. I can't trade. This is going to give you a good result. I have 4,000 armor, 7 physical damage reduction from an attribute on my shield, and 20% physical taken as chaos. 40 chaos resist. So it is a really tanky character, even in the craziest, highest tier maps. Usually I'm not getting one-shotted with this HP pool, and the process of going through the map is probably easier than most because, yes, armor is really, really good, especially against small hits, and in this case, in even pretty big hits. There are some nodes here that I think are very important to identify why I think the armor approach has merit. Yes, you might see someone with a lot more energy shield than I have life, or a lot more mana than I have life, but defend with 200% armor against critical hits, this is a really big deal, because normally if you get like hit for a little bit more damage, it'll like crush your armor. The damage reduction provided by armor is not a flat percentage. What it shows there in the character sheet, that's an approximation, okay? When you take a crit, it's going to be a larger value, your armor is going to be less effective, but Blade Catcher can actually make it so you can take less damage if the monster crits you, okay? And normally this is just to apply to physical hits, but it doesn't because we have 25% of armor also applies to fire damage taken from hits. So whenever we get hit with a crit from a fire source, the armor that we have will also be doubled, thus crushing it. So we take far less physical damage, far less fire damage, and because of altered flesh, we take cold and lightning as fire as well. So the armor is applied to that 20%, basically making it 2. So the altered flesh is 18% less cold, 18% less fire, and, you know, based on your chaos resist, maybe 15 to 20 something less physical. Because remember, if we're taking 20% of the physical, that hit is smaller, the armor is more effective than otherwise. So it's actually more than 20 DR in some cases. So armor is really, really, really good if you get the very powerful nodes. And even though you might have a smaller health pool, it doesn't mean that you're less tanky. Now, I do want to quickly explain how some of the details work with like the damage. When you're leveling, the Arsonist is a good choice. You can get Scattershot and Magnified Effect. Basically, they do 3 projectiles total. They go from 1 to 3. 20% less damage, 20% less attack speed. So that's like 60.64. But then, especially if they have some AoE with Magnified Effect, all 3 projectiles will hit the same target. So it almost doubles the damage with 2 links. If you have some AoE, or if the target is big, like most bosses, you don't even need Magnified Effect. So this is an extremely powerful effect. When you start off, you'll see that your Arsonists take quite a lot of spirit, but gems that are spirit-based in PoE2, their spirit cost goes down as you level the gem, which is why it's so important to get gem levels as early as you can. 7 is not a high number. I don't have a very high spirit pool. I could, if I wanted, convert my life into spirit, which is what the guide actually has. It's just that I have fairly crude gear, only having played for a bit over 2 days now, and I am already doing the highest maps in the game. So right now, I just don't want to die. You know, if I got this, I could use like 3 more Arsonists and it would upgrade my damage by like 30 to 40%. I'd lose 25% of my life. That will often be a good trade, but we have to keep in mind that these small nodes are 3% life. They don't look like much, but these are the best small nodes for an ascendancy in the game. Okay, the other classes have garbage like 12% spell damage. We have 3% increased life. There's very little percent increased life on the tree. There's effectively none. So that's working out pretty well. After that, you can use the guide to see what you want to socket for the Arsonist. The Raging Spirit, Fire Infusion. I like Feeding Frenzy. Bullseye is nice to get a little bit later. Minions actually don't really need accuracy when you start playing, but as you get higher levels, the monsters that you face get higher and higher evasion, which means you need higher and higher accuracy to not miss. If you disregard accuracy, it might be a bit of a problem. There are some links that you can use for some of the other skills, but honestly, that is the core of the build. Once you get it to fairly high level, you will see that I use... where is it actually? Did I skip? Oh, okay, it's missing one. There we go. So the Storm Mage, why would we use the Storm Mage? So we actually use one Storm Mage, and the Storm Mage has a higher cost than the Arsonist, and sometimes the breakpoints don't line up exactly, so to use a Storm Mage, you might have to give up 2 Arsonists. I wouldn't do that, okay? So you only use a Storm Mage if it replaces only 1 Arsonist, which is most likely, because the cost is only like 8 or 9 spirit higher. It's not that much higher, but it can potentially, based on the breakpoints, based on how much spirit you have, might be a problem. Control Destruction is okay, but really the big one is that this minion can shock, and shock is a damage taken multiplier on the enemy. Now sometimes it won't get shocked right away, sometimes it'll take a while to shock. When you're clearing a map, a lot of the mobs won't even be shocked at all. So yeah, it is what it is, but the bosses, they actually have a pretty low ailment threshold in PoE2. Even in my crude set of gear, the Skeletal Storm Mage has shocked like tier 14 bosses with just this. And it's really valuable because shocks from supported skills do not expire on ignited enemies. So if it's near your dog, it's always ignited. If you have the firewall up, it's always ignited. If the raging spirits have hit the boss recently, it's probably got some pathetically tiny ignite on it. So basically what this means is its shock chance is not very high. But once you shock the boss, the shock will stay on the boss for the rest of the fight. And the idea is, yeah, support skills 100% more chance to shock. I'm using Control Destruction. You can use Lightning Pen because we don't actually it's based on the damage dealt. So Lightning Pen might be a good choice. I have Control Destruction now that I think about it. I probably should be using Lightning Pen, so that's another choice. You can see that one in the guide. And there is another one to improve the magnitude of shocks. So you can actually get your shocks, I think, to like 35% damage multiplier. So if you have decent uptime on that, on the tankiest targets, it is absolutely worth it to use that and drop one of the arsonists. Again, you'll probably see a number of other content creators playing pretty similar setups. I just made this build studying the passive tree and some of the gems the night before. It just turns out that, yeah, that was pretty much a good build. So it's working out pretty well. A quick highlight of the gear. You want to get a helmet that has plus to minion skills. The helmet that I have found with plus to minion skills, they suck. So I'm using one without it. Again, I have pretty crude gear right now. You want to get a scepter. The most important stat on the scepter is the plus to all minion skills. This goes to 5. I have a 3. I have found a couple 3s and nothing higher. And the other stats are complete garbage. But you can get additional spirit, which would be insanely big. You can get things that multiply their damage. The crit-based damage increases, they're typically not worth it because minions have 5% chance to crit. If you get every single source of critical chance on the entire tree, which is a huge investment by the way, it goes to 12%. Now, 12% it's not a lot. So I basically choose to avoid going crit with the minions entirely. For a shield, apparently they can roll physical damage reduction. I only found this out when I found this exact shield. That seems like a pretty good stat to have. Get some life, get some armor. Resists are super, super important and very difficult to get. Unique options. The uniques in this game are generally very bad. Ignore them. For a body armor, you want something with lots of armor because you have this thing, 80% increased armor from equipped body armor. Now, because I haven't converted my life and because I've been doing the highest resistance penalty areas in the game, I'm really struggling to get spirit and resistances. So this armor is actually really crappy. You are looking for an armor that's closer to this one. This actually gets me to 7,000 armor. So this versus this, it's an additional 3,000 armor. And this has spirit and it has chaos, which is crazy. Why don't I use this? I only lose 85 life. Why are you not using this, Kripp? That seems like a crazy armor. It's actually pretty crazy armor. I'm not using it because I literally just cannot cap my normal resistances if I use this. I just can't. And that is fairly important. For an amulet, amulets can also roll spirit. They can also have spirit on their base. It's really hard to get jewelry in this game right now, so it'll take a while, perhaps until I get one. This is just the best I have between life, attributes, and resistances and spirit. This is probably the best piece of gear I have in my character. Life, strength, cold resist, lightning resist on a lightning resist base. This actually made me able to cap my resistances for the first time. It was a journey. And I have another one here for a while. Life resists on gloves. Life resists, I don't have life on it. Movement speed is really big on boots. Movement speed is by far the most important stat. Movement speed on the passive tree is like, I think this is the best movement speed node. 3%. There might be like a 4% somewhere, but yeah, that's what we're talking about. I think this one has 3% for like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 nodes. 3% movement speed. Okay, so the boots, if you're like, should I get 10% movement speed boots or 30% movement speed boots? These 10% movement speed boots have more life. No. You go for the highest movement speed. You need to be able to move in this game because getting surrounded is death, and you want to avoid that because if you die, you lose your map. Very hard to progress. Belt, armor, pretty bad life, but it has the resistances that I needed. And that's pretty much it. You don't really want to utilize the weapon swapping mechanic because it unsummons your minions. But Kripp, I saw the demon form in the trailer, or whatever. Where's the thing? Bam. It looks cool. Shapeshifts remove your weapons. If you remove your weapons, it'll unsummon all your minions, so you can't use that. But yeah, this is a really powerful character. Again, I'm third on the ladder, and I've slept just fine since this game came out. I didn't even know that I was going to even place on the ladder. Again, there's been, content creators that have been named enough that have had like review access for like 40, 60 hours. If I had any access to the final version of the game, I would have gone through it twice as fast, right? So I just kind of playing for fun. Yeah, I play these games pretty quickly, and I'm pretty efficient, but still, I took time to explain how the build works. I've been updating the guide on Mobalytics while I've been playing personally, right? So, I have to say the build is at least quite good. And if you want to follow it, I doubt you'll be disappointed. Minions actually don't suck too bad in PoE 2, as it turns out. There are other viable builds, of course, but this is where I've spent my time learning and perfecting the build, so I pass to you on this knowledge, and if you again want the written form of this, make sure to check out the Mobalytics guide in the description below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.